This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. Hey, we've got something unique and different for you today. This week's show, we're interviewing a guy that's not only a very successful stand-up comic, but he's transformed himself and he's an incredibly successful motivational speaker. We're going to talk all about that. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's professional comedian Ray Engan. Ray, it's so great to have you on the show today. Thanks for taking time out of your valuable and motivated life to share with us today.
Oh, it is fantastic to be here. Great to hear the cheering of the crowd. It's always a wonder to be in front of this huge live audience we got here in the studio. It's amazing.
It's a lot of fun. Hey, you worked for me a lot back in the 90s, and we're not close friends, but I know you and I know a lot about your professional success in the last decade or so. But let's catch the audience up. How did you kind of become a stand-up comic, and at what age?
I watched a lot of TV, and I was fascinated with this guy that used these words and drew them together and painted pictures with his words. And I didn't know who he was until years later. It was Jay Leno. And so I used to love the original Jay Leno when he did What's My Beef on David Letterman. When I was in college, I was sitting at a table having a couple of adult malt beverages, and there was a sign hanging in the university center that said amateur comedy contest. And I just pointed up to the sign and I said to my buddies, I could win that. And what they did is they made me put my words up and they signed me up for it. So I actually had to do that contest. And that contest was the very first time I ever went on stage as a stand-up in college.
What are friends for, right?
Yeah.
Did you actually write some material? Did you just kind of go up and wing it?
I did. I wrote some stuff and I still have the pages of what I wrote. And it was pretty hacky, but my first joke ever was I was thinking about this show last night, and people asked me if I get nervous, but I don't know. I kind of slept like a baby last night, which means I cried, puked, pissed, crapped, and kept everybody in the house awake till 4 a.m.
So that's a great first joke.
Yeah, that was my very first joke. I did some commercials in the act, and then it was around the time that Michael Jackson lit himself on fire, so there was Michael Jackson references in there. I always liked the stuff that was going on that was a little bit quirky. I like talking about that.
Oh, well, that sounds like a great start. And I kind of stepped on the answer. Did you win the competition?
I did.
Awesome.
I did. But there was 3 people in it. So,
Well, being the best of 3 still makes you the best. But what a great introduction to comedy. But still going up to kind of placate your friends, which, by the way, what are friends for but to throw you into uncomfortable situations. How did that transform? Because I know you were a successful professional comic, that it's a big leap to doing a college one-time event to being a pro, which you were. Did that develop kind of organically? Was it a plan?
No, it was I was intimidated by going into like San Francisco, where all these people I saw in these local TV shows were in there. And then, so after college, I didn't go on stage for a couple of years. I had a job, and I was working at a fitness club of all places. And I went into an open mic night one night, and I saw these people doing the open mic night. And I thought, oh my God, if this is what stand-up's like, I could do this, and because I didn't think I was good enough to do that. And so I just started that process and went out every night and wrote a ton of stuff and just kind of went from, I ran into you at your contest.
The Great Northern California Comedy Competition. Was that your introduction to Laughs Unlimited?
That was my introduction to Laughs Unlimited, and I won my first round, and then I don't don't know what I didn't win I didn't win the whole thing, but I did win the first round. And that's where I met you and wound up getting booked up at Laughs Unlimited and did my first week at the Birdcage, which was a lot of fun. And it was I loved old Sacramento so much because it was almost like you could do no wrong in that room because the atmosphere that you created in there was fantastic. And the comics, we used to sit in the green room and say, okay, so I'm going to go up and I'm do as much time as I can without doing a thing from my act.
Oh, really?
Who can survive the longest? We used to bet on stuff like that. I walked out once, those large industrial rolls of toilet paper you had back.
Right.
I brought one on stage once and just started talking. And I got like 35 minutes through and, I was about ready to wrap up because I was middling then. And somebody finally said, why are you holding that toilet paper roll? And I had no answer for it. I just dropped it in the ground and I stood on it and I said, because I'm on a roll. I had no plan with it. I just wanted to do that because I would do things like that at your club because the energy was so good and people kind of wanted you to take a chance on things. So I really enjoyed going up to Sacramento.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. And it's true. I think the club, the atmosphere was such because you were away from the main LA, San Francisco, New York, where you could be seen by somebody really important, but it was an A room. It gave professional comics an opportunity to play with their sets, play with their words, and play with the audiences. And as a producer, I encouraged that because I think it made the comic and the audience more engaged, more connected. And that's when everybody has more fun. Yes, you have to be a pro. Yes, you have to be able to prove that you're funny and in such a way that they leave smiling. But anything in between is go for it, right? Have some fun.
Yeah, because that's what it was. That was what it was all about back then. It's just having fun and making people laugh and roaming from town to town with tiny little skits to make humanity a better place.
It's so funny. I've talked to a lot of professional comics. I don't think any of them referred to it as tiny little skits. That's a great way to, but it's true that if you package your act, because you never know how much time you're going to have. Some gigs, it's 3 to 5 minutes, and another gig, it could be an hour. And if you have 1 to 15 different packets or premises that you are writing comedy about, you could put together the right package for the right show. It also depends on the audience. I'm going a little deep into how comedy works, but every professional comic has to be prepared for whatever situation they're thrown into, whether it's a time restriction or, you might have a really complacent, fun-loving audience, or you might have a bunch of drunk motorcycle guys, and you have to be able to adjust your material or your little skit to meet that.
I also use the phrase tiny little skit because back then I was too young to know the term vignette. So but you're absolutely right. There's a lot of comics out there that didn't understand how to read the room. And for example, I was in Montana one time and the guy that was opening for me was a guy from San Francisco that decided in Montana he was going to do his 15-minute set on his killer version of what works well in San Francisco on gun control.
Ooh.
And while he was talking, I could hear in the audience almost like
exactly.
I had to follow him, and I'm also from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I was immediately part of his team, right? So I got up and I started talking, and I wasn't doing that well in the first minute or two. So I said, it's about a time I should do some dick jokes, huh? And they went, yeah. And I said, well, if you hold on for a second, I got about 10 minutes I'm working on. So if you'll listen to that 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes, I'll do as many dick jokes as I can. We'll all leave here happy. What do you say? And they all went screaming. I did an hour and 10 minutes and I didn't tell one dick joke, but I repositioned the audience to accept who I was instead of what they thought they were going to get. Only one guy at the end said, y'all supposed to do some dick jokes.
Well, at least they were paying attention, right? Yeah, I could just see some old cowboy sitting there going, well, when's the dick jokes?
Yeah.
I paid my money.
Yeah, I pays my money. I want my dick joke.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, you were a professional road comic. You just alluded that you played all around the West Coast. I don't know if you made it to the East Coast. How long were you pretty much making a living as a comic?
I probably made a living at it for 10 years.
So that's a great little career. Good job. I guess
Yeah.
those little skits worked.
Those little vignettes now.
I'm sorry, vignettes. I need to mature.
There's extra money in the letters that you use. If you do that.
Well, I think that 10 years is an incredible time. It's been brought up before. I'm going to restate it. It's a difficult life. It's fun. It can be crazy when you're young. You almost have to do it when you're young, but 10 years on the road, staying at different comedy condos or hotels, always a different audience, always a different location. Some of them very professional, like Laughs Unlimited, and others that are just some guy's garage with a beat up speaker. It can be, like the Terrible Tribble tour. Did you ever do that?
Exactly. From town to town to town. There was, I was doing a week in Fresno at this club, and this club had a restaurant in it, and the restaurant was really good. So we got really excited to go there. And they said when they set the itinerary, you're staying at the Hyatt. You're staying at the Hyatt. And I didn't really check the itinerary really well because the Hyatt wasn't spelled like the Hyatt was good.
H-I-A-T.
It was like H-I-A-T, yeah. And I put the do not disturb sign on the first night. And literally this club, it looked like a mafia club, with the red fake velour or whatever.
Right.
And
a lot of tassels.
Yeah, and I put the no, do not disturb on there. And at like 9:30 in the morning, bam, 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 bam. Go away. Bam, we need your towels. Bam, bam, bam. And so every day this guy would come and collect my towels. And then finally, after 3 days, I just left them outside. But when I checked out, which I didn't, this is earlier on, I didn't learn not to check out so they wouldn't try and charge you.
Right.
But I looked at a whole week, 7 days, the price, $57.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were in an upscale Hyatt.
Yeah. A lot of uptown funk going on in there.
Yeah, and Fresno's not the safest town to be in anyway. So that would be a scary road gig. Well, now you worked I discovered you at the Great California Comedy Competition. You worked for me for many years in the 90s. Any particular memories of shows or people you worked with at Laughs?
Oh my God, there were so many great people. One of the best things was that comedy condo and the kind of camaraderie you get. Because a lot of times you go in these things, people put you up in hotels, you have your own room. Well, we're staying in a house, and Frank Prinzi was the headliner, and I think I was the opener. It was like one of the first weeks that I worked for you, and we're just sitting around there, and he looks at me and says, "You got anything you're working on?" And I used to write nonstop, but I never used it because I never thought it was good enough. I always had this kind of imposter syndrome. They're going to figure out I'm not that funny. And I took this. I took the notebooks. I had 3 notebooks sitting in front of me, and I just started reading these things to Prinzi. And Prinzi's the headliner, and I'd seen him on TV before, so I was kind of looking up to this guy. And he's laughing at everything that's in the book. He goes, "Dude, you have a whole freaking headlining act in those books." And that moment gave me the confidence, being able to go further and stretch myself and go for longer times. I grew a lot working in Sacramento because you allowed me to just try stuff, just do stuff that I didn't have to do the same 15 minutes or 30 minutes every night. I could do whatever it was that I thought the audience would enjoy. And I also heard great stories when I was in there, and I wish I had been there, but I guess next door to the condo, there was somebody at one point who was a little bit crazy. And Bill Hicks came in and he instructed all the comics that they had to, when they exited the door, they had to look around and put their sunglasses on before they went off and drove in their car. And when they came back, they looked around and took their sunglasses off to give this appearance of being, because this guy thought it was like a CIA safe house.
The real paranoid guy, and Hicks was playing off it and playing into his paranoia. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. Bill Hicks was a unique guy, and that's hilarious.
Yeah, I heard that story, and I actually got to work with Bill Hicks later in a different arena, but it was fantastic to hear that. I asked him about it. He goes, "Oh yeah, that dude is crazy."
Well, also working with Frank Prinzi, sadly, his name hasn't come up a lot. He kind of moved back east and just kind of disappeared into the world. But Frank was one of those guys, like you said, he got his shot on Letterman and TV and was, I always thought, incredibly funny and headline for me for years. And just getting an opportunity to work with somebody like Bill Hicks and Frank Prinzi as a young, impressionable stand-up, even though you're already a pro, getting that chance to hang out had to have been a wealth of experience and knowledge shared.
Oh yeah, and Milt Abel was just brilliant to watch, the way he constructed his stories, and I remember those three. The other things were the people that I knew that we'd come up and you hang out with. Richard Stockton, I remember.
Oh wow, haven't heard that name in a while. Yeah,
he wrote a book, and apparently we took a car trip, and that car trip is in the book. I'd forgotten completely about it, but I had to go look it up. But the thing I remember about Richard Stockton was there on Thursday night, and then Friday night, he didn't show up to the show, and neither Saturday nor Sunday. We were like, what happened? Well, apparently he was in a part of town and looked just like a bank robber. And so they took him to jail on a Friday night. And if you go to jail on Friday night, you don't get out until Monday because there's no judges with that. Or maybe he did the Friday night show and just didn't show up Saturday, Sunday. I forget what it was. But yeah, that story I hadn't remembered in years. But he was going out to try and find some cigarettes one night. And I jumped in his car and we were going there. And all of a sudden we went across the railroad tracks, and all of a sudden Sacramento kind of changed.
Yeah. Well, you went across the tracks, right?
Yeah, a little darker area of town. And I said, man, we just went into the wrong side of the tracks. And that's the story that got in our little road trip with it.
Oh, that's cool. And I'm glad he had success with his book. But those are all great stories. Thanks for sharing those. Now, one of the things I wanted to get to, because you're a very interesting guy, Ray. You not only had a decade of professional stand-up comedy, making a living at it, but you pivoted your career, and maybe you can explain why, but I know now that you're a very successful motivational speaker. You have Leadership Through Laughter as one of your programs. You developed the humor algorithm, and you've done some writing for television. So after comedy, or when did you, let's take it in steps. I know you did some comedy writing for like the Tonight Show and the Late Night Show with David Letterman. How did that come out of your professional comedy career?
That was really, it sounds really good, but it's like piecemeal stuff that you submit through either other people or, you send a fax. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd fax things off to different people and watch.
You're talking about the $50 a joke deal. Yeah. But that means that you had some creative juices working, that if on the Tonight Show or if David would use your material on TV. So just so everybody in the audience knows, it's very difficult to stay fresh and funny. And people like Jay Leno and David Letterman would open it up to comics could submit premises or jokes. And if they got used, you got paid about $50 a joke. I think it depended a little bit, but a lot of guys did it, but not everybody's got used. And the fact that you were able to add that to your resume is a nice thing. So you were doing that while you were doing comedy. Yeah.
That was, back in the day, I would wake up and I would buy 5 newspapers and go through and try and find the weird stuff in the newspaper that might be interesting. And I would send, maybe 5 things down there to see what would happen. And I discovered the USA Today trip around America, 50 states with 50 weird little news things. And those were pretty much
a gold mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it must have still been very exciting to hear somebody of Letterman's stature do your material on TV.
Yeah. It and I wrote for other comics that appeared on there, and that would appear on there too.
Oh,
and
cool.
So that was more fun to see that the stuff you wrote for somebody else got on there as part of their Letterman set or their Tonight Show set. So I had more success with that than actually the monologue stuff. But yeah, it was fun to the anticipation part was taking the VCR tape. This is the era we're in. The VCR tape of the last night's monologue and plugging it in to see, am I getting paid today? You know, and so that was that little anticipation. You know, the any place you could find $50 was a fun thing back then. You know.
Oh, that's cool. Well, how did that pivot? Tell the audience and me, because it's new for me. I know you went into Toastmasters, and maybe that's what helped you pivot into being a motivational speaker. But how does a professional comic who maybe got tired of being on the road change and morph into this very successful leadership guy?
Well, it kind of went from, I realized I was getting comfortable just staying at home because I did some stuff. They had comic traffic school, which got my fix of being in front of an audience with there. And I wasn't reaching out to get booked or doing any of that other stuff because I was enjoying staying at home. And I started to talk to my friends again, which was an amazing thing.
Oh, you had a life?
Yeah. And they were talking about working and all these things. And I go, what is this? What is this health insurance that you speak of? You know, what is this?
Some of the things us adults deal with, right?
Yeah, exactly. What is a mortgage? I don't know what that is, right? You know, is it a longer version of rent? You know, and I took that and I realized it was a young person's game, and I wasn't getting any younger, so I just jumped at trying to figure out how to get a job because I never really had a job. You know, I didn't really think about having a job when I was doing stand-up. And I took a book on interviewing. So I jumped in the library and I took a book on interviewing, and I learned way too much about interviewing for jobs. And I created a resume as if my comedy career was a sales job. And I took that and I sent it.
Yeah, that's a great idea though. Because every time you get on stage, you're selling yourself to the audience.
Well, life is a series of sales situations. Patricia Fripp, the greatest speech coach in America, will sell you that. But everything you do, if you ask for a date, you're selling yourself. If you're asking for a job, you're selling yourself. If you're making a sales pitch, you're obviously selling yourself. Right here, we're selling ourselves to the audience. Hopefully they'll want to listen more with this thing. And I didn't realize at the time, but I sent out 15 resumes and I got 13 requests to be interviewed. And I got to the final 2 on like 5 of those jobs. And I was like, holy smokes. And I had never done anything in sales or anything like that. So I took a job, a simple job that I thought maybe I could dump if I went back into comedy or something. And I worked for, I started with The Good Guys, which was an electronics outfit. Yeah. And I was up in Sacramento when they had the big shootout in Sacramento.
Oh, there's a little history there for the audience. Yeah, if for the audience, if you go back a few decades, what we consider Best Buy now, which is kind of your like electronics and TV and radio store, back then it was The Good Guys, and the retail store here in Sacramento actually got raided by some armed robbers. And there was a big standoff and a shooting, and people got hurt and killed. It was sad, but The Good Guys electronics store was famous before then. But your job was with The Good Guys.
Yeah, I just went in to sell, and I quickly became the number one salesperson in the department I was in over Christmas, because I joined right before Christmas because I knew that I could make a ton of money during Christmas, and I stuck with it. And I became a general manager for them, and wound up. They got bought by CompUSA, and I was the general manager of a big box retail store, and I left that and I sold some other things and wound up being a general manager a sales manager in other companies. And I wound up in the most award-winning small business in the United States, which is a company out in Petaluma. I'm not going to mention their name because then people ask questions about it. And I just wanted the experience was fantastic. But
a little mystery for everybody.
What's that?
That's a little mystery for everybody.
Yeah. So make it listen more, because maybe I'll slip the name in there. But that job was a small business, and I actually testified in front of a presidential task force on small business in America. And
wow, wait a minute, you went through that pretty fast. So you're working for this small company in Petaluma, and you got invited to speak at a presidential task force?
Yeah, it was about there was really two companies in the small company, and one kind of fought the good fight for small business. Since if you look at all the things that back up small business, all of them are backed by big business. For example, the Chamber of Commerce is owned by the biggest businesses in America, but small business go there like clockwork to pay their dues and kind of network with it. And federal contracting was a big part of the small business I was with, and there's a lot of misappropriation of funds that are supposed to go to small business. Like 23% of all federal contracts are supposed to be subcontracted through small business. And whenever they find a mistake, it's always, they miscoded a large business like Boeing as a small business. So I got to speak in front of a task force that was looking into stuff like that. And the head of the SBA's right-hand person was leading that. And I said in the first line or two of what I said, I came 3,000 miles to put my 2 cents in. And I don't claim to be as smart as y'all or know all the initials, but I do know one thing is that, Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before he finally got it right and invented the light bulb. So I know you all are close.
That's a great start.
The whole room started cracking up, and the guy who was standing on stage looked furious, but he didn't say a word. And at the end, when he wrapped the whole thing up, he mentioned two people, and one of which was me, and the other one was my boss that also got up and had some wicked things to say as well with that. But that led to I got to appear on MSNBC during election coverages, but that was like 8 words. 4 of them were like, "Back to you, Scott." Kind of right there. But
wow, well, that's really fascinating. That exposure at that presidential task force event really jumped you into the public light, and you almost instantly became a small business celebrity, I guess, or expert, even though you started off by saying, "Hey, I'm not an expert," but when you're saying that in front of a room full of smart, powerful people, that makes you an expert. That's exciting.
Yeah, the perception always comes out like that. And when I left that company, because my boss in that company was a huge small business advocate and would fight against the dissolvement of the Small Business Administration and take on that. And so he was a big influence on me being able to do those things. And I left that company, and I wondered, because I started sitting around and thinking about sales and what I did. And everywhere I went, I worked with different companies. Everywhere I went, sales went through the roof. And I tried to figure out why. At first, I thought I was lucky. Then I realized, okay, different companies, different technologies, different everything. And I realized what I was doing is I was teaching my salespeople about stand-up comedy, not about the fun part, standing on stage and Laughs Unlimited with hundreds of people that are drinking and laughing, but the part where you have to go to the back of the bar where bikers are playing pool for $100 a game, and you have to tell them at 8:58 to stop playing their pool game so you can go on stage at 9, to get your Rock Springs, Wyoming fix of the Tribble tour, where you're going to talk for an hour, and then they're going to line dance to Boot, Scoot, and Boogie, And but I realized that the social side and the connection that you make doing stand-up with club owners, with audience members, with bookers and the press and all that. That was the key thing. So I was teaching that to people, and I thought, I wonder if any business would ever buy that kind of information on how that works. And so I sold my soul to the devil and went to a seminar company. And I went on the road for about 5 years. And I joined Toastmasters in between this. I think I joined Toastmasters like 11, 12 years, about 2010, I think. And then in 2013, I went to the World Championships of Public Speaking, got to the semifinals. And then
wait. You're going fast. There's an actual competition for public speakers. Is that a Toastmasters thing?
It is a Toastmasters thing.
I'm not aware of this. So if I join Toastmasters, or anybody in our audience joins Toastmasters, there's an actual competition. Is this like an annual thing?
It's an annual thing. It's a worldwide thing.
Worldwide. Wow.
Yeah. There are 350,000 Toastmasters worldwide.
Oh my gosh.
And there are 6 rounds to the competition. And so you start out in your club, then you go to your area, your division, then your district. Then there's a regional competition, which is like the semifinals. And then the finals, there's 9 or 10 people that go up in the finals. And the winner is the World Championship of Public Speaking.
Wow. And how far did you go?
I got to the regionals, and I was probably in the top. I don't think I finished lower than 4th in my regional, so that would be what, 36 to top 36 to top 50 in the world.
That's incredible, Ray. Yeah. Now, how do they do that? Do they like pick a topic and you have to talk on it, or do you bring your own?
It's supposed to be an inspirational type story,
and they limit you time wise, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's 7.5 is the most you can do. 4.5 is the least you can do, but 7.5 is the most you can do.
So everyone's doing about a 5-6 minute talk, and those are compared competitively, and you can work your way to a world championship. Are there prizes, or is it just for to have on your resume?
It only means really anything to Toastmasters. If you win it, you just get a lot of people to ask you to come and speak for free in a lot more places.
That sounds like quite a prize.
Yeah, and some people take it and do things with. When I won my district, and there's, I think, there was 6,000 people in my district, and I didn't know where to turn to. And this is kind of how I got into this whole thing is I reached out to one of the past world champions of public speaking, a guy named Darren LaCroix, who had done stand-up. I'd seen he'd done stand-up, and he also became a world champion. So I just sent him an email, and he sent me an email back and helped me in the next round. I didn't win the next round, but because of his guidance, I kind of saw what it took. And I thought, man, it would be really nice to speak for a living again, because I'd kind of lost the reason I joined Toastmasters, I lost my ability to hold a room in the palm of my hand, and I wanted to get it back.
Interesting. Because and I hadn't thought about it until just now, but Toastmasters, or public speaking for motivational purposes, is very similar to stand-up comedy. Your job is to grab the attention in the room, get those people engaged, much like you were saying with sales. I've been in sales my whole life. I've been very successful, whether it was roofing or cars or construction, but it was because I know how to engage in a conversation. And it starts with what we learned on stage as comics. I mean, I'm not a professional comic, but I had way more than my share of stage time. And you were able to realize that, wow, what I did as a comic is going to transform into a professional motivational speaker. I think that's genius. Good job. And
the numbers that I found after thinking about that, as far as what humor does for business, and the other thing I looked into what everybody always asks. So when I do these seminars for companies, I worked with a lot of managers on the road that would come to these seminars, and they didn't want to be there because their company said, "Oh, I have to fix my people." It's not the people that are broken; it's the company and the leadership usually that's broken. And they would come in, and I would say, "What do you want to get out of today?" And the number one thing that it says, "I want to learn how to motivate people." And what I learned from that is that there's a big difference between that and what you really want to do, because everybody can motivate people. You need to know how to do it. For example, here's a very motivating statement that you could give to an employee. Scott, do that by Friday or you're fired. Right? Very motivation.
Well, wait a minute. Yeah, that's the kind of motivation that that's that carrot and the stick, and that's the stick.
Well, and what happens, what people don't realize is that what motivation is an outside source acts on an individual to create an action. So when I say that, you either do that by Friday or you get fired. You have a choice. But what you're trying to do is inspire your people to do the right thing, even though nobody tells them to do it. And what inspiration is, so motivation, really the way to do that for free in the workplace is through praise, because everything that you praise in life gets repeated. Inspiration comes from a constant getting people involved in what the next step is, because what inspiration is hope. And all hope is understanding the next step. Because if you understand the next step, you can get wherever you want to go. You just have to show them that there's not this giant chasm they're going to fall into. It's like when somebody comes into the boss and says, Scott, I don't know what to do. You don't sit there and go, I don't either. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and what great leaders do is that they won't even say that we got a problem, boss. We got a problem. They'll say, okay, what's going on? Just tell me what's going on. What's the situation? They don't use the word problem. They calm everything down. And then what people are upset is they don't know what to do next. And the shorter you can make that next step, the more likely people are to take it. And the more you give them more rope and let that step get longer and longer, then the more they stick with you and stay with you and they solve their own problems. And then pretty soon you are a boss in a company that doesn't need you.
Wow.
Absolutely fantastic.
Look at this, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. You haven't paid a dime, and look at this great advice you're getting. Ray, that's really deep, strong stuff that everybody can learn from. And you use the analogy, the difference between the panicked employee and the boss. And of course, I was the boss of the king of my world, I used to say. And at one point, I had 125 employees, and we went through some highs and we went through some lows. And trust me, everybody out there that owns a small business, shit happens. And the key to being a good boss, I think, or a good entrepreneur is exactly what you stated. You don't panic. You say, okay, what's the situation? And a good boss knows, even if he doesn't know, he's going to make a decision and take steps. They may be the wrong steps, but he's got the balls to make those steps, right or wrong, to get through the situation. And that's the difference between a type A personality decision maker versus everybody else, is that whatever the situation is, an entrepreneur is willing to have hope and take that next step, right or wrong. I mean, we make a lot of mistakes, but as Emmett Stone shared, failures are the stepping stones to success. You have to fail to succeed, basically. And what you're doing is sharing with business leaders how to develop their staffs into their employees into thinking this through themselves. You're not. It's like you're not giving them fish. You're teaching them to fish.
Well, and so it comes through a lot of simple little things, like a staff should never hear from their boss this sound. That's of no value to you as a boss. And entrepreneurs are better at doing that than like middle managers in big companies.
Oh yeah, because they're afraid to make a decision because what's the boss going to think?
Well, and here's the typical path of a manager in a big company. I do my job, I focus on it, I get really good at it. And somebody says, you know what, you're really good at your job. What you should do is we should put you in charge of all the other people doing your job, give you a 10-cent raise, and not train you how to manage those people. How does that sound? Well, that sounds great, right?
Right. I got 10 more cents.
And they got the job because they were really good at their job, and it kills them to see it done poorly. So what do? They said, well, if I just work really hard, everybody else around me will see I'm working really hard, and they'll do the same thing too. Well, that never works either.
No.
It works until something goes wrong. So the hardest part about a new boss and a new leader is they have to give their staff the permission to fail. And if you don't give permission to fail, guess who does all the work? You do. And if you're the only person that can do your job, you can never move up because they can never replace you.
Oh, that's all smart stuff. Now, I know one of your teachings, for lack of a better description, is the humor algorithm. Now, you use that to teach and motivate business people to teach and motivate their employees. Can you, I don't want to steal your thunder, but can you capsulate what the humor algorithm is?
So when I did stand up and when I wrote for other people, I couldn't have told you how I wrote the stuff. I just could write it. I kind of went through and reverse engineered why people laugh and did some research and more. Like, for example, I didn't realize that in business, salespeople are 37% more productive if they use humor in the workplace. Regular staff is 31% more productive. 84% of people in the workplace feel that the funnier person is doing the better job than the unfunny person, whether they are or not. And I thought, oh my God, this is a great key to doing that. So I kind of messed around with why people laugh, and I had to come up with a definition of humor, which I stole from the Humor Research Lab in Colorado and their TEDx talk. Humor Research Lab, or HURL, is the initial with it.
Great initials.
Yeah. And what they say is that what humor is, it's a benign violation of a norm that surprises you. So it has to be benign because it can't really hurt. Humor in workplace is really not even big laughs. It's like, I call it safe surprise, because it's just creating a smile everywhere you go. We're buddies and we're walking down the street and I fall down. The first thing you do is point at me and laugh for me falling down, because that's different. But if I get up with a broken arm, then it's not so funny anymore. And it isn't funny until that arm heals. And then once the arm heals, it's a funny story again. So that's why it has to be benign, and it has to surprise you because you can't tickle yourself. And so I took that definition and I kind of looked at how humor works, and I broke it down into the different things. And the fastest way to funny in the middle of this whole process is something that technically is called a phonetic ambiguity, which is why I call it a two-way option. It's a word that can be misinterpreted, which is where most humor comes from. And for example, the Geico commercials that have problems with our pipes under our sink, and there's a bagpiper under the pipe. That's an example of a phonetic ambiguity. And that's in the middle of it. And I presented this to a storytelling convention here in Petaluma, and the headliner, who's from the East Coast at the storytelling convention, said, I've never seen anybody break it down and put the math behind the humor. And that's where I thought of the name, the humor algorithm, because it's not really a numbers thing, but it's designed to let people that are process oriented, who love their ones and zeros in the tech world, but hate the human interaction that go with it. It allows them to understand how to connect with people and how to put that smile on their face to make the workplace a more productive place. So that's really the basis behind the humor algorithm. And the core of it is that two-way option. But most people don't think about that. It's the fastest way to get funny.
Oh man, that is genius stuff, Ray. It seems so simple as you say it, and I think that some people just have it and others have to learn it. Sales technique that even if you're making fun of the product you want to sell, you're engaging the person that's thinking of making the purchase into the item that they're considering. And I think that's one of the examples you use in leadership of through laughter, is that any situation, sales or as a comic on stage, can be exemplified and connected more with either the purchaser or an audience if you engage them in a humorous way. And congratulations on taking the humor algorithm, the work you did in breaking down really how to make almost any situation funny. But you took it a step farther. You were able to turn around and teach that to others, and through leadership, through laughter. I just think that's really, wait a minute. That's incredible, Ray. You did a great job. I mean, and then to turn it into a career, you made a living doing this. My hat's off to you. Congrats.
Yeah, and it was exciting to see those people get up and rise to their feet again in this tiny little studio. That was fantastic. Having all 300 people jammed in this 10 by 10 little room that we got here, go nuts right at the end. That was fantastic.
Well, there's a lot of energy when you're sharing important information. And Ray, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today, because we did talk for about the first half about stand-up comedy and how it added something to your life. The art form stand-up comedy became a part of your person in your life and your history. But I wanted to share with you, and I think we did, how you were able to pivot that into a new career where you were able to break down what worked as a comic and not only turn it into something that made you money as a successful salesperson and more commissions, but you took it another level to where through motivational speaking and really breaking down and packaging the information, you were able to share it and improve the workplace and the lives of others. I mean, that's just fantastic, Ray. Good job.
Well, and here's one thing that I think that people should kind of understand, because my signature story that I tell, if people want to be funny or charismatic or be a better salesperson, it's not a magical gift like a unicorn. It's a process that you can follow to create this talent in yourself. And when I was a young kid, I was the shyest kid in the world. I actually wore a bucket on my head in grade school. And the signature story I have is about my fifth grade teacher, who really kind of taught me how to come alive and enjoy life. And so he taught me the process of what to do. He taught me what some of those things mean. I won't tell the whole story here, but one of the key things that I learned is that everything in life starts uncomfortably with a thumping in your chest. And everything that's good for you in life starts uncomfortably with that thump in your chest. Most people run away from that thump. And what my fifth grade teacher taught me is that thumping in your chest, it has nothing to do with your heart. It's your dreams knocking on your door. And come out and play.
That is cool. And I got to tell you, I can just picture you as a young child and finally taking that bucket off, and the kids go crazy.
Actually, this teacher made me the lead in the Shakespeare play in fifth grade. And so that was
well, that'll get you over shyness pretty quick.
Well, and I had the last two lines in front of an entire audience. There's like 217 people in this place, and I didn't know what the last two lines were, so I just made them up. And I just walked to the audience and I said, "Lord Shakespeare has written tremendous lines to end tonight's plays, but alas, what they are, I know not." And I bowed, and then he brought the curtain down, and and I haven't shut up since. So.
You got your taste of fame and you went on with it. Hey, Ray, you're a very interesting, deep and successful guy. It's not hard to see why you're able to motivate others. Continued success with that. Real quick, is there anything you'd like to plug? How can people find you? We have listeners that own businesses and have employees. I think they would be interested in talking to you. How would they do that?
They can go to leadershipthroughlaughter.com. That is the website that is in the middle of being redone and making a better thing, since people are actually looking at me more and more now that I don't know. You can go to ray@humorspeaks.com and email me direct. I also have a site called kiwilive.com. The password is Zoom. So it's kiwilive.com. The password is Zoom. And I put things up on there on the latest appearances I'm making. So for example, right now, the slide deck for the humor algorithm, I believe, is up there. And I have a book coming out called Leadership Through Laughter. So there's 52 humor tips, which is actually the outline for Leadership Through Laughter, because they all have a leadership story behind them, but I just have the tips on there. And there's also a link on my calendar if somebody wants to talk to me for 15 minutes or so and figure out if there's any way I could help them, or they've got a question about how to use humor in the workplace. Go to my calendar, which is also on that kiwilive.com password Zoom. And you know, take as much information as you want. Be happy to give you more live and see what we can do to help you out. I'll be running the humor algorithm class again, starting on the first Monday in August, I believe. So it starts again in August. We're finishing up one next Tuesday, and then I'll start it again in August.
Well, that is great information to share, except that this will probably launch way past August, but we'll have to make sure they have the information to contact you. Hey, Ray, everybody out in the audience, Ray just gave you some great ways to connect with him. This is a smart man that has great information to share, whether it's for yourself, for your employees, for your company. He is very approachable and apparently likes to talk. So take advantage of that and reach out to Ray Engan. And if you need to, you can contact me through my website and this podcast, and we'll connect you. Hey, Ray, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. And we just want to say thanks so much for not only everything you did as a stand-up comic for me and my club, Laughs Unlimited, back in the day, but for what you're doing for small business through your motivational speaking. It's a real honor to have you on the show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. And if the audience in the studio enjoyed it, they should just stand up and start cheering right now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn on the applause sign. Let's hear it for Ray Engan. Thanks for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back next week with another terrific show. Thanks for listening. Bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ray.
Thanks, Scott.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.